and thank you so much for joining us here at Redemption Arc as we welcome in the E3 season. Joining me is none other than Derek. Derek, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm great. Derek, do you remember the year 2008?
Boy, do I. I was writing for a website called 411 Mania. I was pumping out some sweet top 10 lists before everyone else did it. But, not to say I was an innovator, but,
You were like BuzzFeed before BuzzFeed was even a twinkle in some little SEO gremlin's mind.
Yes, very, very unique concept listing things. But, yep, right just before the BuzzFeed era.
Yeah, in the year 2008, I think I was a sophomore in high school, and then a junior in high school. So, very hard time to look back on.
You also wrote for that website around this time. They were desperate enough to hire high schoolers.
I think I was not quite on yet. I think
You were
my
close.
time was yet to come. Yes, I was close. Oh god, I think they cleared the archives of all of my content at least. So
Oh, mine too. I think they just nuked everything pre 2014 or something.
it's probably for the best.
Kind of sad. Kind of sad.
Don't really need anybody to see that list you made where you listed the top 10 games as if you were a Game FAQs
That was a good
forum
one.
poster. That was a pretty good one. Actually, you know
Yeah,
what? That should be preserved. Is that on archive.org?
I wish. I
Yeah.
think who would care enough to archive 411 articles?
Uh, well, somebody I'm not going to mention on this podcast. That's who. Anyways, Derek, it's 2008, and in the year 2008, nothing is hotter than the Nintendo Wii.
Oh boy, howdy. You're right
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely. This is the console to have. And naturally, that means that going into the E3 season, there was all kinds of excitement and speculation and wonder around Nintendo's E3 presentation. And this is appropriate because back in the day, Nintendo presentations used to be a very interesting experience. I would
Yes.
I would say an experience that oftentimes offered the highest of highs, like Twilight Princess, and absolute lowest of lows. Period. Um, now, this is the perception before the year 2008, mind you. So, you know, there was a lot of great stuff, and then there was a lot of bad stuff. Really, not a lot of in the middle stuff.
I would say it feels kind of like, if you look at it, they're like a conference that doesn't feel like it's put together by people that do a lot of conferences. It reminds me of, I don't know, Ubisoft, but it had good things, unlike Ubisoft.
It's like your dad is putting together a presentation of all the video games he thinks you might like.
Yes.
And sometimes he's really on it, and sometimes he gets you sprung for the Nintendo DS.
Well, you got to teach the little kids about sex someday.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure sprung would be my first choice, but
Probably not.
I was gonna say ping pals would be my first choice.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, because you could send messages to strangers.
Flipnote Studios.
Mm-hmm. And PictoChat.
There you go.
You could send little dick pics to anybody within a certain radius of your wireless signal.
Hmm.
Yeah, so anyways, that's all to say that these were interesting times for Nintendo, and, well, I don't really think that we knew what the year 2008 was going to usher in for the future of the Big N. This is a notorious press conference. This is the Wii Music press conference. This is the press conference at which point a lot of people, including myself, started to realize that maybe, just maybe, the Wii was not the revolution that we were promised it would be.
Well, on my top 10 list, I made a special edition of it where I just complained about Nintendo for the whole thing. Didn't list anything. Just said, I don't like Nintendo's direction. For those that have listened to the normal podcast, it should be obvious that Cheston and myself are both heavy Nintendrones. We enjoy this crappy company for better or for worse. But this is when we were pretty close to jumping ship, I'd say.
I would say that I was a little more reluctant to jump ship.
I was ready to go.
And when I saw this, I started to do what a lot of good Nintendo fans do, and I kind of like dug my feet in and tried to defend what I was seeing. But deep down, I know that I was pretty troubled by what I saw in 2008. So, what we are going to do today is, well, if you've listened to another episode of Redemption Arc, usually we talk about a disappointing game from the past. Well, today we're going to talk about a disappointing presentation from the past. And so we are going to talk a little bit about our memories here first, because we actually have not watched it yet. We're going to soon, but we have not seen this since the year 2008. I don't believe either of us
No, I
has.
haven't.
So we're going to come at it with fresh eyes. So first we're going to talk a little bit about our feelings at the time and some of the things around the presentation at the time. We're going to watch it, and then we're going to come back and discuss, well, where we think this belongs in the long, long lineage of press conferences, whether it deserves its reputation. Spoiler alert, it does.
Well, you don't know that yet. We haven't watched it.
That's true. I just have a feeling based on what I have encountered as I've been looking at some other things related to the Wii.
Well, as soon as I put in the YouTube Nintendo E3 2008, I see a picture of Cammy or whatever, and instantly I'm angry. Like, oh, I hate this woman.
Cammy being
So-
Cammy Dunaway and not Street Fighter's Cammy.
Oh no,
To be
if it was
clear.
Street Fighter Cammy, that'd be great. But this is Cammy Dunaway. I just hated seeing her. It was like time to just, I don't know, find something better to do with my life.
So let's use that as our jumping in point to talk about our memories of this show, what jumps out to us, and how we vaguely remember feeling at the time, aside from what we've already mentioned. So Cammy's a great point to jump in because Cammy was new at this time. The Nintendo press conference was typically hosted by Reggie. It was a Reggie-centric affair. Reggie had come out a few years prior and talked about not kissing ass. Oh yikes! Kicking ass and taking names and making games, and everybody loved that. And Reggie, as goofy as he could be, was something of a fan favorite. And so any time that you watched a Nintendo presentation, you looked forward to the announcer at the Nokia Theater saying, "Welcome Reggie Fils-Aimé." But this presentation, I remember, I don't know if she starts it, which we'll find out shortly, but I seem to recall waiting for Reggie and getting Cammy. And I'm sure Cammy is a fine person on a personal level, but she wasn't Reggie. In fact, the way she introduced herself was about the polar opposite of Reggie, from what I remember. She took on this very casual gamer vibe. She was like your friend's mom who had a Wii because she heard about Wii Sports, basically.
And yeah, what I agree with what you said. Like Cammy came across as this is the casual person trying to talk to the moms that got into or the grandmas even that got into the Wii because they heard Wii bowling was cool, and it just sucked seeing her.
And those people didn't really watch E3 press conferences. I feel
Never
like
have,
it's safe
never
to say.
will. Yeah,
They didn't get on GameSpot and look for the live feed like I did.
yeah. This was actually much harder to find back then. You had to go to the actual websites. You couldn't just go to YouTube. I don't think.
No, I would always go to GameSpot. I had a tradition around these press conferences, specifically Nintendo, because we lived in the Central Time Zone back when this happened, and so these presentations were typically about 11 Central Time, I believe, so lunchtime. And it was always summer from school, so I would sit down and, well, actually, no, before I sat down, I would drive to the local Subway sandwich shop, and I would get myself a Subway sandwich, spicy Italian, pepper jack cheese, no vegetables, hold the sauce. And I'd come back, and I would sit in front of the computer, go to GameSpot.com, wait for the show to start, and I saw Cammy come out, and, my Subway sandwich started to turn a little sour in my mouth, It wasn't exactly what I was expecting, and from there I remember it just being a very confusing presentation. I think the way I would describe a lot of these Nintendo presentations from this time, from my memory, is that you would tune in with a lot of hype because, as always, Nintendo presentations have way too much unreasonable expectations around them. And I'm sure in 2008 there was a lot of expectations around. I mean, I don't know. Let's throw out the Nintendo things. F-Zero or Donkey Kong or Derek, give me some good ones.
Chibi Robo.
Chibi Robo, yes. Chibi Robo, yes. The typical franchises that people are always thinking are going to come back at E3. So you always have all of that, and then you watch the presentation. It doesn't start with that, of course. It starts with, whatever, some big holiday release. Very nice. And then each game you think, okay, this next one they're gonna show Star Fox, and then it's not. It's something you hate, and then like, okay, fine. Well, no Star Fox. Maybe the next thing will be Metroid. You know, for whatever reason, you've deluded yourself into thinking that's a possibility.
Maybe the next one will be a Captain Rainbow translation.
Right, and then every continuing on and on and on throughout the presentation, you keep thinking this, and then you keep getting disappointed until the very end of the presentation, when they either do a one more thing that is actually exciting, as was the case when they did Other M a few years down the road from now, or they just don't do a one more thing, and you're left wondering that's it. Like, they did a whole presentation and there's not one thing that I'm looking forward to. And that's kind of my memory of this presentation, is getting through it and being like, I guess I like Animal Crossing, okay, but I don't really know that I want any of this.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway from this. I don't know if this was the year Animal Crossing is in it or not. I think it is. But my big takeaway was came and going, and we didn't forget about the hardcore gamers. Here's Animal Crossing. And for those that don't know, Animal Crossing is not exactly a hardcore game. It's kind of like we want everyone to play this sort of game. So it was like, whoa, this is not what I had in mind.
It is played by core players. It
Yes,
is
it
not
is.
hardcore itself. And,
No.
a lot of those core players, if you ask them which Nintendo franchise do they maybe care a little less about, I would say Animal Crossing is probably on that list.
Yeah, I think the people that have like 500 hours in Animal Crossing, they're probably not. I don't know. It's weird to say this, but they're probably not huge Nintendo fans. They're probably just like, I don't know. They play what they play what's hot.
They like Animal Crossing, they like Mario Kart.
Yep.
They're not your
There's nothing wrong with that. But...
Yes, no, there's not. But they are not your, let's say, Zelda people.
Yeah.
They're not banging on Nintendo's door asking where the next Metroid is.
Yeah, that's not why I come to games, but there are
No.
people that are like that.
There are, and I will tell you before we watch this and maybe talk about anything else we vaguely remember about this presentation. Something that really stuck out to me as I did very, very light research, because I wanted to keep it mostly surprising to watch it again. I was thinking about the year 2008 and where the Wii was in 2008. And so I was trying to think what games had come out and what games were set to come out in the years to come. So I'll do it this way, Derek. What are some games that you think of when I say Wii?
No More Heroes comes to mind.
Okay. All right. Well, this is great. Good start.
Let's see. Not Gungrave. What the hell? The one where you're like a bandit in the West. Why did I think Gungrave? It had like Wii Motion Plus support for the sequel.
Okay, well, you're a lost cause. I think you mean Red Steel.
Yes, Red Steel. There we go.
Okay.
Let's see. Twilight Princess.
Okay.
Like the big launch
There we
game.
go. Yeah. Okay. Now we're a little more in line. I thought you.
Brawl.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. I thought you'd mentioned some of the big hitters. So when I think of the Wii in terms of first party, I think of Twilight Princess and Smash, as you mentioned. Especially Smash. That was a really big deal for the first few years, as the hype for that got a little out of control. You had Mario Galaxy, came out in the first full year of the Wii on the marketplace. That's a pretty big game, continues to enjoy a nice legacy there. I think about Wii Sports, obviously kind of a instrumental in the Wii's success. That's how it wiggled its way into a lot of households.
I guess it shows my opinion of the Wii being kind of low. That Red Steel was what I thought of.
I think that says a lot about you.
Because Mad World also would have been on that list. So,
That says so much about you. Some other games, Mario Kart Wii, that had
yeah,
come out.
underrated in my
Yeah,
opinion.
Mario Kart Wii, Wii Fit, Wii Play. You know, I'm listing games that are, in terms of sales numbers, these are some of the biggest games that ever came out on the Wii, and these are really some of the games that have enjoyed a nice long legacy. I would say that these are the games that people remember most fondly, especially Mario Kart. Mario Kart, Wii Sports, Smash Brothers. I think those are definitive Wii experiences.
New
Well,
Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong
yes.
Country Returns.
Yes. Well, aside from those, the things I mentioned, those had all come out by the time of this presentation.
Hmm.
All of those games, those quintessential Wii games, had all come out by the time of this presentation.
Even Metal Slug Collection.
Even Metal Slug Collection, that was a launch game. So that means that this presentation was basically setting up what would be the second wave of Wii hardware. And,
Software.
yes, software. And yikes, that's, again, all of those big titles had come out. Now, obviously, there are some big hitters. You mentioned New Super Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong Country Returns and, oh,
That's later,
Mario
yeah.
Galaxy 2. Those games would all come down the line. But the big hitters that really defined this platform, including Mario Strikers Charged, were already out by the time that this presentation happened. So that is, to me, looking at it from, with looking at it in the rearview mirror, that is a disconcerting realization.
Yeah, when you mention all these like hard hitters like Galaxy, I'm thinking like later in the lifespan, But
These are the
before this
games that
stuff,
people remember this platform for, and by the time this presentation happened, only 2 years into the Wii's life, most of those had already come out.
I mean, especially Brawl, because like to me that feels like it was late Wii, but no.
It does, and regrettably it was not. It had another 4 years left after that, which is, honest to goodness, just baffling.
Yeah, I guess the wait between Brawl and the Smash U was longer than I thought.
Yeah, so my point there being that it seems like at this point, if I had to look at it with hindsight, I would say that the Wii had peaked, and this was Nintendo trying to find the next big thing, and maybe not succeeding super hard.
Brock Lesnar.
Mm,
Sorry, that's
yes.
just.
So anything else before we jump into this madness that you remember?
I'm trying to think if there was anything that I took from the show that I liked, and I honestly can't remember anything. I just remember the big blunders. So,
I think I just wanted to mention the Wii Fit or not Wii Fit, the Wii Music guy.
oh yes, I remember that the drum guy was the big meme at the time.
That was, and it was. There's very few times where you see something happen in real time and just know that it's immediately iconic.
Oh yeah, that was it
But
for
that
sure.
was that. He had this crazy hair, that mohawk, interesting style he had going on. And Wii Music had been a game shown before, very briefly. But this presentation,
This is their closer.
this was this was the showstopper,
This
and
is the Twilight Princess, the Smash Brothers Brawl, the Mario Galaxy.
yeah, well, let's just say that guy stopped the show.
Yes.
You saw him come out and do his pantomiming, and I pretty regularly or pretty immediately recognized that uh, this was this was not good.
Nope. Nope. So I'm just curious to see if there's anything from this conference that I liked that I'm just like not remembering because I was just so negative on it. Because I'm sure there's got to be something. But I guess we'll see. Because I'm pretty sure even Sony 2006 has a couple things I like. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that is so, but I'm not so confident about this.
Yeah, we'll see. I suppose.
Yeah, so we're gonna jump into this. We're gonna watch it, and we're gonna come back and talk about what we saw. Derek, 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 Derek,
We are back.
Derek, Derek. I want my money back.
That sucked. That was worse than I remembered it.
That it is hard for me to look back at something from the year 2008 and find it to be worse now than it was then.
Yeah, it did not age well, and it was already bad at the time.
We played Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and we found some things to like about it.
Yes.
This is probably the worst thing I've watched.
It's up there. As far as like, I mean, I even think like famous 2006 Sony had stuff I liked, and that Microsoft at the Connect conference probably had something. But this, goodness gracious, the highlight was Animal Crossing City Folk, which I don't even like.
There was, no joke, at least 20 to 30 minutes of just talking.
Yeah, lots of
Yeah.
slideshows, some talk about how they're going to engage and enrich the audience. I think Iwata came out and said, "What was that?" It was like expanding the mind.
Yes,
Uh,
expanding the mind. This was like a victory lap for them.
yeah,
A little premature, I think, based on some of the things they showed. So, God, let's jump in chronological order,
the
Derek.
show kicks off with Shaun White snowboarding.
Yes, we start with Cammy Dunaway, not Reggie. She even says, "I'm not Reggie," which I actually do remember now, and remember groaning and knowing, yes, you are not, in fact,
Whatever.
Reggie. So then Shaun White snowboarding.
But before Shaun White snowboarding, we had about 5 minutes of Cammy talking about her snow trip when she
Yes,
broke her wrist.
yes, of course. Well, it was the lead-in to Shaun White. You got to establish, you know, people don't remember that when you did these live shows, you had to establish why you would transition from thing to thing.
Yes.
Otherwise, the audience can't follow you there. Why are they talking about Shaun White? Why is this carrot top looking fellow on top of a bathroom scale?
This was an era when
Now
Shaun
we
White
know.
was in everything. Like he
He
was all over the place.
he was in all kinds of commercials and TV shows. Very topical character to have on your show.
He was like a Michael Phelps before Michael Phelps came along.
He was barefoot,
Yep.
had some gnarled looking toes. That
They
man.
did some zoom ins on the feet, which was very popular in 2021, but
Yes, in 2008, a little
didn't
just
really
kind of
notice it
tame.
at the
Yeah,
time.
he just didn't realize that was what was going on. So that game, I don't know what to say about it. It's Shaun White snowboarding. What do you think it looked like?
It looked ugly as sin.
It did.
It looked, I don't know, like a 2003 PS2 game.
It had the distinct stink of a Wii Fit balance board game because the key problem with the Wii Fit balance board is that it is good for exactly one thing and one thing only. It can detect inputs to the left and to the right.
Yeah, it didn't look like Shaun White was controlling it very well. Because
No,
that is one thing I'll give them credit for. All these demos were definitely real. Um, and it started with Shaun White controlling his snowboarding very poorly.
yeah, it looked like he would have rather perhaps had a joystick.
Probably.
Yeah.
He probably plays games for real. So
I would expect that Shaun White actually plays video games if I had to guess which ones. I guess Call of Duty.
yes, but I would assume he's held a joystick before Call of Duty or maybe Skate.
I would suspect he might partake in some recreational drugs while he does so. What do you think?
I would say it's highly likely,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Alright. Well, no judgment here. That's well, judgment for this game. It looks bad. But hey, Shaun White, do your thing.
It was an
Uh,
interesting choice to kick off the
yeah,
show.
get your paycheck. So we go straight from that into Iwata.
Who I wrote spoke nonsense for part of it. There was something that he said where was like I don't know what he's talking about.
Actually speaking in tongues.
Yeah,
It was a Philosophy 101 lecture about breaking down the walls that separate the casual gamers and the core gamers, to which I would say I'm actually kind of convinced that this era might have built that wall a little more sturdy.
yes, it made me hate casual gamers
It
for a
made
period
it
of
made
time.
people very contentious because they felt like they were not being served by these companies anymore.
He said something like the Wii has sold more in the past like 4 months, more than it has since November, or some like nonsense stat. I was like, what are you talking about, Iwata?
They
Like
they
that's
used
not
a lot of
impressive.
They used a lot of weird numbers to make. I mean, their numbers look good no matter which way you sliced them, but they used a lot of funky ones to make things look even better. Like comparing the sales of the Wii in 19 months to the sales of other consoles in 19 months. Like, who uses 19 months as an increment?
It was strange.
It was an odd choice, but that was later on in the show. For now, Iwata did his thing where he. I mean, shoot, I don't know.
He
He.
the big takeaway was one like the weird like en thing that they had going on, enrich, enlighten, whatever. That was like they had like three words they kept repeating. That was part of that, and also we swear Mario and Zelda team they're making stuff.
Oh, right. Well, that's probably the biggest part of this conference is that they confirmed that there would be, shock and awe, a Mario game and a Zelda game coming to the Wii.
And those would be Skyward Sword and Mario Galaxy 2.
Yeah, so they batted 500 with those announcements.
Yeah, we to be fair, we did not know Skyward Sword would suck, but at the time, it would be kind of nice to know that those two were coming.
With what happened later in the show, you would be thankful for that little glimmer of hope
Yes,
they
that
provided.
that was unironically probably the highlight of the show.
If God forbid. So, if you've ever owned only a Nintendo console post the GameCube, you know it's always a little tough road to hoe because you don't get a lot of big third-party releases. But man, if you had a Wii and that's all you had, holy shit!
Yeah,
That Mario and Zelda, that was their one little indulgence for.
when they were talking about sales figures, Iwata was they showed like 5 DS games on screen. I think like Nintendogs, 2 Brain Age titles, a new Mario, and something else. There was a fifth one in there, but I remember writing all bad. All these DS games are bad.
Brain Age
New
is
Super Mario is the best one.
Brain Age is fun,
Yeah, I suppose it's more like a 10 minute
but
sort
I
of
could
game.
get like a free Sudoku app on an iPhone and have a better
Well,
time probably.
we'll get to the iPhone later.
Oh, yeah, we will. That's weird how this works out.
Yeah.
So, boy, that was interesting. After we graduated from our liberal arts college, courtesy of Professor Iwata, we were
And I also
taken.
wrote I miss Iwata on my little notes
Yes,
I
of
took.
course. As much as that presentation confused me and disturbed me, I do miss his cadence, his presentation skills.
He's very charming. He's
Yeah,
charismatic.
he seemed like he always seemed very kind when he talked.
Yeah.
There's good balance for Reggie, who seems like he could probably kill you if you wronged him.
He could turn it down a notch or two.
Yeah, he could afford to do that. So after Iwata helps us graduate from our liberal arts college, we get to take a nice little jaunt into the world of Animal Crossing with Animal Crossing City Folk. This is the worst Animal Crossing game ever made.
Yeah, it's not fun.
It's for future context. Of course, you didn't know this at the time. It was literally just the DS game, but there was this little city area. But the city area was pretty much some of the things you would have normally gotten in Wild World. Just you had to go to a city to get them. So
Yeah, it's a little more inconvenient. I remember thinking when this trailer came up back in 2008, thinking like, what's the purpose of this? I could do this in the DS game.
this
Why does it need
was
to be separate?
this was very much at the time where they kind of realized that Animal Crossing was hard to iterate on, and
Yes.
they would find their footing a generation later with New Leaf on the 3DS. That was a pretty solid Animal Crossing, but the Wii game was not quite what anybody was looking for. The big announcement along with City Folk was voice chat coming to the Wii, because remember the Wii was a console in 2008 that did not have voice chat. And so Nintendo's solution, because they're always finding Nintendo-like solutions, was the Wii Speak microphone. This was a microphone you placed near your sensor bar, and the idea was that it could speak to an entire room. So you could have perhaps, 2 or 3 people hanging out in a room, connecting with 2 or 3 people hanging out within a room somewhere else. I don't know anybody who had a Wii Speak.
That is
Personally.
it is a strange idea. It assumes that you're playing online with multiple people with you, which I think is kind of rare. I've done it with like Mario Kart 2 players before,
Yeah.
but certainly not like 4 people.
This would
Um,
later inspire the Kinect, because I believe the Kinect by default would become your microphone on the 360. So
that's just a bad idea. Like when I'm
yeah,
when
it's
I'm
not
thinking
good.
like the microphone I'm using for this is one that's right up against my face. That's the way it should be when you're playing games.
Yeah, I don't want your cat interfering
No,
and giving its hot takes on this Nintendo press conference.
no.
It probably liked
Um,
it, except for Nintendo dogs, Nintendogs.
they would later find out the way to iterate on Animal Crossing is add a new feature and cut a bunch out. But that's
Hey,
just
it worked.
it did work.
Worked really well. We were talking while this played how funny it is to look back on Animal Crossing for people who are new to the series, because like a lot of people, my wife was introduced to it with the Switch game, which, as Derek said, adds a lot, takes away a lot too. But the funny thing is that game's so customizable, and watching City Folk was reminding me that like when she played that game, I talked to her and I said, "Yeah, did you know that on the first game you couldn't build anything, and if you wanted a bridge, you had to wait for the mayor to jaunt over to the river, and you had to wait for him to go to the exact spot you wanted. And once he built it, that was it. That was your bridge. Game over.
That's I
You're
just find
done."
that kind of charming. I don't know.
There was some charm to you couldn't customize your own map, so every time you started a new game, your map was made for you.
Yeah,
We've talked before about how we're not very creative people, so we like our things to be made for us. I
yeah,
would say this
exactly.
falls along those lines.
Yeah, I prefer the old Animal Crossing way of we'll take care of all that building stuff. You just socialize.
I would love some Animal Crossing in the future to be a nice cross between some of the modern tweaks and the old tweaks, but hey, that's different conversation, different time. Current time, well, 2008 time, City Folk bad, and this is, honest to goodness, probably the second best thing in this presentation. So
They did say it comes out 2008, and it did hit its release.
it
So
hit
good
its
on them.
release. They thank goodness, because like I said, it's just the DS game with
Yeah,
voice chat. So
looks ugly as sin,
yeah,
but
it is a good thing that it did hit its release date. But if this was their big holiday release, which pretty sure it
yeah, I guess it was.
was not a.
Well, Wii Music I think was supposed to be,
Oh,
but we'll
don't get
get there
too ahead of
later.
ourselves.
Yeah, we'll get there later.
Yeah, so yeah, so Animal Crossing, I don't think, to be fair, when I remember at the time being like, "Oh, thank goodness Animal Crossing." Like, "Hey, this is a console Animal Crossing off the DS, back on a console where it belongs. This is cool." We speak I would love to talk to someone who plays Animal Crossing.
Well, I mean, to be fair, this was early enough in the show when they showed Animal Crossing where it could be like, okay, well, I guess they're done with
Yeah, this could
the
be
showing
nice.
charts and shit. So
Yeah.
maybe we're going forward. We're gonna see some more games.
Yes, this could be all right.
Yeah.
This appetizer's this appetizer's fine. It's
Well,
not cheese fries, but it's not a bloomin' onion, but it's
we
all
could
right.
get F-Zero here.
Yeah, we could get something. So what did we get next, Derek?
Reggie came out finally,
Man,
and I was thinking like, all right, Reggie's here, time
here
to
we
go.
go.
And
Metroid, boom.
Reggie talked about charts for 56 hours, give or take. It was so boring. I can't. It was just like they were just bragging about how well the Switch was. I mean, the Wii was doing.
Yeah, they showed boring charts too. It was all bar charts. Boring, boring ways of measuring your statistics.
Reggie says it was going to be brief, and I swear it felt like it was dragging on and on and on. Uh, I think I think it was done around the 35-minute point, and by that point they had showed all of two games in 35 minutes, and this is an hour-long conference.
This is so funny though when you look back compared to now. A Nintendo Direct in 30 minutes has probably unveiled like 30 games
Yeah,
all
it's like
told.
rapid fire. Yeah,
So this is honestly incredible. This is to be fair, this is what I miss about these old conferences. You just never knew what you were gonna get. Sometimes you
yes,
get a game, and sometimes you just get a filibuster from the CEO of the company,
yeah. The filibuster tactic would be often used by Sony. They loved bragging about how well their systems do.
or how not well in the case of the
Yeah,
PS3. They did love to
exactly.
brag about how bad the PS3 was doing,
Yeah, sure enough.
which was a weird thing to do.
Weird
I'll
flex, but
say, but
okay.
you know, can't fault Jack Tredden for bragging where he can. So, yeah, that second game, we got through a lot of content here. Second game is done, Animal Crossing in the books. Next out comes Old Faithful Cammie Dunaway's back, and she is on stage to walk through the ever famous Nintendo third party lineup.
But first, she told us about how the they're getting everyone to play, and they showed the charts of men and women, and how it's 52 men percent and 48% women. They're like, that's cool, I guess.
Yes, this was the DS, so she talks about some DS third parties.
Well, I even joked like, why did they bring Reggie out to do all the chart shit, and then like, why don't they have Cammy do it? And then Cammy comes out, and immediately there's more charts. It's like, and I even wrote down more charts exclamation point.
She also likes charts. Her bar chart's a little more interesting because it was double layered, so
Yeah,
kind of
they had
fun to
color.
see how the proportions of females and male gamers grew,
Hmm.
and what those female and male gamers were playing on the DS of all places was Spore Creatures,
Hmm.
which is like Spore, but somehow worse. So that's pretty cool.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
Guitar Hero.
a Guitar Hero game, which I actually reviewed back in the day when we wrote for undisclosed. Well, actually, you disclosed it. 401 Mania.
Undisclosed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when we wrote for 401 Mania, uh, reviewed Guitar Hero on tour Decades, which is the one they were talking about. That game is fine, but hurts your hand after a while. But good on them for putting that on the DS, I guess. And they had something else. What was it? Was it Call? It wasn't
Um,
Call of Duty. That was
that was a
later.
Wii game. That was later.
Yes.
I think it was just those two were the highlights.
Highlights?
Well, you know what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of another DS one. I wrote down games they showed, and I don't
Oh,
have anything
Pokemon
else to do.
Rangers.
Oh,
Yes.
Pokemon Rangers. All right,
Yes,
because
Cammy
I
said
remember.
new Pokemon, and we thought Pokemon Black, Pokemon White. These are the classic Pokemon games.
Yeah,
When you
Gen
say
5,
new Pokemon, this is what you mean.
or even the Silver and Pearl, or the Silver and Gold remakes.
Yeah, but no, this is Pokemon Ranger 2. Pokemon Ranger was the game where you drew circles around Pokemon to catch them.
And that's when I like slapped my head and was like, "Oh my god,
Yeah,
they just can't do
so
anything right."
it was like they were walking over a rake over and over and over, like Homer in The Simpsons.
Sideshow Bob.
Oh, God. Well, speaking of walking on rakes, my Simpsons references.
No
Woof.
kidding. No kidding.
So, any of this doing anything for you, Derek?
Um, I had to Google to see if Spore Creatures came out. It did, and I also had to see. Cammy originally referred to it as Spore, so I was like, did they make a DS version of the original Spore? They did not. It was just Creatures. So there you go. But to answer if it did anything for me, no, I wasn't inspired to go buy a DS.
No, I can't. I God, I just feel like there had to be better content on the DS to show off in the year
Uh,
2008. Let me look.
you
When did Hotel
think?
Dusk come out?
When did Pokemon Conquest come out?
Well, Pokemon
I
Conquest
was
is a
living in
late DS
Hannibal.
game.
Yeah, I was living in
Hotel
Hannibal.
Dusk was
So
2007, so I guess the DS was. To be fair, the DS was in its twilight years at this point, so I guess
yeah,
that makes sense. But did Elite Beat Agents come out this year? Because
I
that
don't
would be
know.
another one that'd be like, hey, you had all this time, why didn't you show that off? Let's see,
I think Elite Beat
2006.
Agent. Yeah, I'll
Wow.
say that feels pretty early to me.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, oh, they did tease Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars.
Chinatown Wars.
Yes. So that
Yeah.
that
And
might actually be
that game's okay.
yeah, that might actually be the best game shown.
It might be, but they didn't show any gameplay.
And it wasn't shown. It was just the
Yeah,
name. They said, "Hey,
just the
Grand
name.
Theft Auto's coming to DS. Chinatown Wars. It's set in Liberty City.
Which
Liberty
made
City."
Cheston groan when he heard that.
Yes, I am so over Liberty City. I know that the people at Rockstar think that their spoof of New York is just absolutely top shelf.
But we want Vice City.
But hey, there are other cities to do. New York is not the only place to lampoon. But hey, what do I know? I'm not the one making hand over fist on a 13-year-old game.
True.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's the DS segment. We transitioned from that into Wii Sports, right? And the Wii Motion
I
Plus.
I believe. Actually, I think they did the third-party games for the Wii next, They
Oh,
did
there are
like
none.
Clone Wars and
Yes.
Rabbids and Call of Duty.
Yes, they all looked horrible.
Oh, I should also mention before we get to that, Cammy also talked a lot about the DS one to do things like cooking, like you like go look at recipes, or like when you get off a plane where your like baggage is, or like where Mexican restaurants are in the area. So basically, like what a smartphone would do, and the iPhone came out around this time. So why anyone would use a DS for this sort of stuff?
Or why
Mystery.
anybody would need a device anyways. I mean, luggage, like
Well, it's
baggage,
clearly labeled.
is
Clearly labeled.
announced by your flight attendant typically, and is also very easy to find. I
But
think
stuff like the
personally.
cookbook stuff is like stuff that you could do on your iPhone. Just
Yes.
and this was around that time, so like I feel like this was their attempt to compete with the iPhone. Maybe I'm gonna feel silly if the iPhone came out like 2009 or something.
No, the
But
iPhone was that because the iPad would only be about 2 years out from this point. So
okay,
the
yeah.
iPhone had been established well before the
So
iPad came out.
so I feel like this was their attempt to compete with that. But why would you ever use a DS instead of a phone for that? Like the iPhone is infinitely better for this kind of thing.
And that screen is so small. I can't picture ever using a DS for.
No kidding. If you ever pull out like the original DS model and like look at the screen, it is tiny.
You'd kill your eyes trying to read a recipe from that thing.
Yes, and as you said during the show, if I saw someone making a like a dinner and using their DS as a reference point, I would not feel comfortable eating that food.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would. I would look for someone who's using a Switch to
But it,
prepare
yeah,
their dish.
it was strange. It felt like Nintendo was trying to be a little too big for their britches.
As they did. DS was used in like museums and stuff. They had a lot of ambitions. Remember that the Wii and DS were very much lifestyle machines.
Yes.
They both had internet browsers. I think that yeah, the DS had, the DS would eventually get an internet browser as
Yes.
a cartridge, I believe, but you know, they they always wanted these to extend into other parts of your life.
So after the DS thing, they went on to the third party games like I mentioned earlier. I wrote down some of them: Clone Wars, Rabbids, Call of Duty. I'm sure there were a couple others, but I didn't really care enough to write those.
And they all look
Um,
bad.
they all
Call of Duty
Call
looked
of Duty looked
especially.
terrible.
Yeah, this was World at War, so this is not Infinity Ward. This was the second tier studio, and I think I could see individual pixels. It was
Yeah, it
that
was
bad.
rough.
And
It
it could
looked
just
like
be the
a.
YouTube stream, to be fair, but
I think I said it looked like a early PS2 game.
I think that would probably be a fair comparison. So dreary. That was the thing about some of those Wii games that were not meant to be on the Wii, is they looked so murky.
Yeah, they showed an accessory during it that was kind of cool though, like the Wii crossbow, the crossbow training thing, the gun.
That's not cool.
No, it's not, but they showed it.
I mean, I was excited to see it because I thought how funny it was because I didn't know anybody who had the Wii Zapper.
Well, they showed people looking so serious while they were shooting.
They did well, and I saw one person laughing hysterically at
Hmm.
people being immolated
Oh
in a
yeah, it's a
simulation of World War II.
nice little flamethrower action.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice there. So after the third party, though, they got to Wii Sports Resort, which probably with Chinatown Wars is one of the only good games shown here.
Arguable, but I
Well,
will say
I mean,
that yeah,
it plays, it's functional.
it plays. Yeah. They showed three mini games. The first
Hmm.
was some frisbee thing, where Cammy threw to her dog Peach. Um, I don't know why they named the dog, but they did. That looked really boring. I don't know why they showed that off. Uh, but what was funny about the demo was that they kept having tech errors. It was like point the Wii remote at the
This is
screen.
a hallmark of the Wii era.
Yeah, it was one. It was nice to see that the demos were real. You kind of appreciate that now, where you assume all the demos are fake. That was kind of cool. But why they showed that, I don't know. The second demo they showed was a wave race style jet ski game, which looked kind of fun. I even wrote, "This looks fun. Best thing I've seen so far." And the last thing was sword fighting, which was a terrible demo. Looked awful.
And people really like the sword fighting, so I think
And I
they
hear it's good, but
yeah,
it looked terrible in the
must have had
demo.
some bad tech issues. It should be mentioned that this was the debut of the Wii Motion Plus. This was the accessory that elongated the Wii remote to make it more accurate. They use the phrase one to one, which is funny,
Laughable.
but I think my big takeaway is that it's kind of sad that after only 2 years of being on the market, the Wii already needed an accessory to make it do the thing it was supposed to do to begin with.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was bad.
yeah. I do think the Wii Motion Plus worked pretty well. I enjoyed it.
It worked very well in Skyward Sword. I think
Yeah,
that's the only thing I played that really took
I
advantage
reviewed
of
a
it.
tennis game with it, and it worked well. I enjoyed it more when they made the Wiimotes that just had it built in, so you don't have to attach the butt plug to the bottom of the Wiimote.
Yeah, yeah. I never had an actual Wii Motion Plus. I
The
only had
Wii Motion Plus butt plug plus the little
the
plastic,
weird condom
yeah, the
thing.
weird condom you had to put it in. It was a very difficult installation and deinstallation process every time you wanted to use it.
Yeah, I never used that because of how annoying it
I
was.
only used it when I played that tennis game, and part of it was because I felt like I needed to have an accurate experience to, the reviewed product.
It's funny because I have a Wii remote that I can use on my computer, and that does have a sleeve on it. So, whatever. I guess times change.
Oh, our Wii, when we got our Wii, we had a bunch of sleeves, but yeah, I
Oh, our
try not to use them.
mom bought it for us.
Yes, she did. Yeah, it was very nice.
So the salesperson talked her into it.
Yes. Hey, no, they made our Wiimotes look special.
They did.
Yeah. So that was I don't know. I thought the demo was a technical mess.
I thought the jet ski game looked fun.
I
Like,
seem to remember at the time, this jogged my memory because I actually forgot Wii Sports Resort was even at this conference because it came out in 2009, not 2008. I remember at the time thinking that that looked fun, and that was kind of my same gist. Is like, if that came out, I would say, oh, that looks fun. I wouldn't buy it.
I think they chose Strange Games to demo for it,
They did.
but it looked all right.
It's not a game I would rush out to buy, but if it's a game I would rush out to play a demo of, maybe like, oh, that'd be fun.
Well, the jet ski game looked better than anything else they showed, literally. So
It sure did. And does Wii Sports Resort take us to the main event, or do we have
I
one little
believe
interstitial?
I believe that is the last thing
That was a very
before.
forgettable press conference, all things considered.
Well, I believe this was the last thing before the one more thing.
Yes, they
And
did.
then
They used the phrase "one more thing." They channeled Steve Jobs and themselves.
they did like they dimmed the lights. They had like a big like spotlight thing. I'm like, oh man, they're making it up this to be huge. I can only imagine what I was thinking at the time.
Yeah, so it was Wii Music. The
Yeah.
debut on the smokescreen was Ravi Drums, a
Yes.
bizarre-looking drummer with a mohawk, who seemed to be shaking his hands in time with something.
I commented that he looked like Chad Warden, but like unironic. Like
Yes,
so.
you should notice that Reggie made a point of saying that this game Wii Music could be played without Wii Motion Plus, and it really showed because those were not one-to-one motions by any means.
No, they were just flailing around.
Yes, and then Miyamoto joined him shortly after, playing the saxophone, looking like a total stooge.
I wrote down what a waste when
Yes,
Miyamoto came out,
yeah,
and also his me was terrible. It looked
yes.
like a racist character.
His Mii looked like a racist character, and he looked like a big goober holding a Wiimote up to his face while he pretended to play the saxophone. Of course, the Wiimote has no microphone up there, so
So
he
you're
was
not even
literally just
yeah.
holding it and pressing the buttons and looking again like a big old stooge.
Now I'll give him credit. He's got a lot of charisma.
He
Yeah,
does.
you love to see that guy have
Yeah,
fun, and it
he
looked
can
like he was
carry it
having
off.
fun.
They would be joined by a few other people. I think they called them the Treehouse Players.
Who were really goofy on their horns.
Yeah, and they played the absolute worst rendition of the Super Mario Brothers theme that I have ever heard.
Not in time at all.
Yes.
It was like I was doing it.
This
Uh,
was designed to showcase why you should go out and buy Wii Music in the holiday season of 2008.
and they made sure to note that they do not keep track of score. This is an unscored game, and they said you can play whatever notes you want to play. So it's just really just like jingling your car keys.
Yeah, that was always my thing. Like Wii Motion, or not Wii Motion, Wii Music was never something I was into. It was like an early tech demo that people said, "Oh, I want to see more of that." And my contention was always, there's just really not much to it. And then they showed it off, and it turned out I was correct because there's just nothing to it. Like you're just pressing buttons. It's not scoring anything. You can press them poorly. You can press them well. Like it doesn't matter. And
Don't have don't have to press them in time.
it's
Nothing.
I guess it is a creative suite at the end of the day, but it's really limited to the point that you would wonder what you could even get of value out of Wii Music.
No, it looks more like an app, like something you'd release for I don't know $4 on the iPhone or something.
This
Didn't look like a game.
this era was pretty known for having tech demos that weren't always developed into full games, and you'd always have fans ask why. And Wii Music was a tech demo, and people asked about it year after year, and then they made it into a game, and it makes you think maybe there's a reason things like Milo never left the development studio,
Well,
you know.
let it be known that I'm a fan of rhythm games. I play them pretty regularly. Even though I'm not like a huge music guy, I love rhythm games. So if they had made this like, I don't know, any other rhythm game where it keeps track of time, I might have given it a chance. But like this is just like flailing mindlessly. It looks like no fun.
I mean, they've made corny music games. They made Donkey Konga,
I love that game.
and
Love it.
that game is great fun. It times you and everything. It makes it worth playing through the strange, poorly assembled soundtrack, but this is this is just a whole nother level of junk is the only thing I can think to call it. This is a $50 game that seems like to me is barely worth 20. Probably had bare minimum development costs. And this is a it is the definition of a game as a child's toy. And it is the closer. That is the end of E3 2008. After that, they walk off into the sunset and head to the show floor. And I can't imagine anybody in that auditorium was aching to get out to the Nintendo booth at
Yeah,
E3 2008.
I think they gave polite applause, but it was not like the ravenous Twilight Princess applause.
No, they did not applaud a lot. There was some applause for Chinatown Wars, and I think maybe Wii Sports Resort a little bit,
Maybe Animal Crossing.
maybe a little bit Animal Crossing, but that was really it. And E3 press conferences are pretty notorious for their crowd participation.
Yeah, it was not a good show.
Yeah, so Derek, a silly question. Is this show as disappointing as it has been drummed up as being for many years?
More so actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
This is
I'm surprised
the
it didn't.
worst E3 press conference. This is worse than Sony's
Yeah,
2006.
it is.
This is worse than Microsoft's 2010
Because when it's
Kinect
not
era
bad,
stuff.
it's boring.
Yeah, and at least for each of those, like you look at Sony 2006. I can't think off the top of my head, but I know 2007 they had Uncharted, and 2007 or six they had Ratchet, and they had other games. Like there were things on the PS3, early PS3, that were worth paying attention to. You think about those 360 conferences like 2010 with the Kinect, and those had like Halo Reach at least. So they threw you a bone, but even when this is throwing you a bone, it's laced it with some kind of nasty marinade. It's like, oh god, it's Wii Sports Resort. Oh, that's cool, but our demo's a giant mess. Oh, here's Animal Crossing, but it's just a DS game with a stupid new element that nobody likes. Here's a bunch of third-party games, but boy, are they all hideous and not at all what you're looking for. Even the Mario and Zelda announcement, they didn't have anything to show. So, like, even that's not a big winner.
No, uh, that was rough. I don't know what to say. Like, I hated every second of it, pretty much.
It, as I alluded to earlier, this was the E3 that I tried to defend it as best I could. Oh, Wii Sports, that looked fun. Things like that. But deep down, I knew that this was spelling dark times for my Nintendo fandom ahead, and I know the subsequent years, 2009 and 2010 less so, but 2009 I think I remember being similarly bad. It's not as bad. This was definitely the worst of the worst, but 2009 was still kind of rough. It started this trend where every year you were like, is Nintendo even going to show anything I like? How much of this will I actually find enjoyable?
Well, this one I found nothing
And
enjoyable. So
this trend pretty much continues, in my opinion, until the Switch comes out, because the Wii U era had some fun conferences, but there was always a lot of trash in those conferences, and you just never knew what to get excited for. And it wasn't until the Switch that they at least found their footing again.
you at least got like Breath of the Wild, Mario
You had Breath
3D
of the Wild, you
World,
had Splatoon, you had 3D
Smash
World.
U,
You
and
had those things, but overall, it started this trend of Nintendo press conferences being almost an expected disappointment more than anything.
I actually, to be fair, I remember the year they announced Pac-Man was in Smash. I remember that being a good conference. I think
I
like
think I
Tropical
didn't.
Freeze was
That's
announced.
actually one of the ones I didn't watch, so
Yeah,
it it probably was. It's probably the one I missed, and it was probably the one that was actually good.
and I remember 2010 was good because they had like Donkey Kong Country Returns and Rayman
Yeah.
Legends and
You know,
all
my
that
favorite
stuff.
thing about this conference is that it reminds me that back in the day when you'd have these disappointing Nintendo conferences and you'd be pulling your hair out thinking, God, this is all they've got for the next year. You'd wait around on IGN.com because later in that day, that very same day, Shiggy Miyamoto would have his little closed door presentation.
For all the good stuff shown.
Well, it was kind of like the idea of how places like Toys R Us have all this stuff in the back. It
Yeah,
was that idea like, oh, the best, like Miyamoto's got stuff that he can show that, he's not even supposed to talk about. It's a little more uncut, than the E3 press
it's
conference was.
unfiltered
And so you'd
Miyamoto.
wait around for these interviews, and I think this year in 2008, he probably made a faint mention at Pac-Man, or not Pac-Man, Pac-Man, no, Pikmin, but usually you'd find that there would be a lot of nothing, and you just continue to be disappointed. And I remember them seeking out Reggie after this conference, and this is where Reggie talked about how Animal Crossing was a core game. And it was because people were saying, oh, Nintendo doesn't make core games, and he was combating with the closest thing he could come up with to a core game at the presentation, which he decided was Animal Crossing.
Well, yeah, it's either that or Chinatown Wars, which showed zero
And
gameplay,
Chinatown Wars is probably the most core, and then,
but it showed
between Animal
nothing.
Crossing and Wii
I'd say.
Sports, I'd say it's a bit of a toss-up.
But you can't even list Chinatown Wars as a positive because they showed nothing. It's just a logo.
Huh.
So even a game that's like solid, like you can't say it was a good part of the show because you could how could you tell?
So I think this is definitely in the disappointing games Hall of Shame, the special E3 presentation wing.
Yeah, I am surprised that I did not completely jump off the bandwagon. Honestly,
Yeah.
this
Oh,
is
I
worse than I
feel
can
that I
remember.
felt that many times throughout the Wii and Wii U cycle that I was done with Nintendo. It
Like,
was
why did I bought a Wii U pretty darn close to launch, and I'm like watching this and like, why did I do that?
yeah.
What a
Well,
dumb
the
thing to
Wii
do.
ended on some higher notes with Donkey Kong, and I was gonna say Other M, but I realized that's just me, so I won't use that one. But I think there was some reason to be cautiously excited towards the end, but at this point, whatever enthusiasm you had riding high off of Smash Brothers Brawl and Mario Kart Wii,
It's
this
gone.
conference took all the wind out of those sails. It
It
was
sure did.
it was set up for it was dark times ahead, and it would portend poorly for the Wii because as I found as I looked up some different statistics related to the Wii's lifetime sales, this year 2008, the year of Mario Kart, the year of Smash Brothers, is the peak of the sales, and every year after that starts to drop off a little bit, and once you get to 2010 and 2011, the Wii is dropping into territory below the 360 and PS3, which was unheard of at the time. And there's a lot of arguments to be made, like, oh, everybody had a Wii, so obviously they're not going to keep selling them. But really don't think that's true. I think you can look at conferences like this and say, maybe there's something to be said for not totally ignoring one of your audiences.
The Wii did win that generation by a
It
fair
did,
amount.
but at what cost? Because
Yeah, what cost?
it
It
set
ruined
them up
them the
for a
next.
huge failure that
Yeah, the Wii was a flop.
you
That's for
know, for a
sure.
lot of people, they believed it would just totally take them out of the industry altogether. So whatever success the Wii had in the moment, it didn't last
I
very
was
long.
50-50. I was 50-50 on whether there'd be a system after the Wii U.
Yeah, and I'm so glad there was, but I also understood why people were hesitant about the idea because I was hesitant.
Oh yeah.
I didn't trust them after the Wii U.
Well, and that was the Wii era was to blame for this. It's what got people dipped out.
Well, I think we can all agree that hopefully nothing at this year's all virtual E3 even comes close to the disappointment of this
I would be
presentation.
stunned.
Looking at you, Square Enix.
I
I
would
know
be
you're good
so
for it. I
stunned.
know you're good for it, Square. But
I mean, all Square Enix has to do is say we are porting one game from the PS1. I'm like, all right, it's already better.
yeah,
So
that's true.
the bar is low.
So hopefully none of those will be a future little discussion for us to have. But I think there's some more Nintendo press conferences in our future, Derek.
Yeah, yeah. I certainly want to look at 2009 to see if it's better.
I want to see 2012 because that's when, or 2011 when the Wii U was debuted, or maybe it was 2012 because 12 was the one where they had, ugh, Nintendo
That was
Land.
it. They had the Bird demo and the Zelda demo where you like press buttons and it changed the lighting. I want to see.
I've been listening to old podcasts from around that time, and I think it was the Bird demo. And the year later was when they were more concrete and they had Nintendo Land and they had all the questions about whether you could have two gamepads hooked up to the same Wii
I
U,
I
all that
remember like
stuff.
when they showed the Bird demo. I remember thinking that doesn't look that good. I don't know why they're showing this. It's really not that impressive. But it was like 5 minutes long.
That's Nintendo. That's Nintendo in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Like this looks
A
like a PS3 game.
a company, a ship, a rudderless ship would be the
They
phrase you
found
might
their
use.
way. They found their
They
way,
found
but it
their
took some
way,
time.
but it took a long time to get there.
Yes.
So, anyways, that's probably a good place to wrap this conversation. Derek, thanks for joining me in my time machine and heading back to 2008.
My pleasure.
Hopefully, this experience hasn't scared you off from future journeys into my time machine.
Yeah, I look forward to doing more of these. I hope that the next one I can take something positive out of it.
Yes, I hope the next one doesn't totally suck,
We'll
but settle
see.
for kind of suck.
Yeah, I would settle for one good thing.
Well, we have no more things for you today, so we're gonna sign off. Thanks for joining us. For now, have a nice E3 and have a great evening. See you later.
All that's left for me is the cowbell.